Hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with my blind reaction to House of 1000 Corpses. This is a 2003 movie and is the first in the Firefly film trilogy. A film trilogy that was created by Rob Zombie and is, from what I've gathered, a cult classic in the horror community. It didn't do extremely well right off the bat, but gained a cult following after the fact, at least from the start. Um, I I believe there's a clown, like an evil clown guy in it. But that's about all I know. And I think one of the actors from it actually passed away. Sometime either after the third movie was released or before it actually came out. Um, I don't remember exactly, but I believe he passed away. Because I believe I heard that even before like there was any interest in checking this out. um, so I don't know much of anything about this film trilogy. I don't know like any story or anything or how it connects. Um, but this is directed by Rob Zombie. It's his creation and everything. And I know Rob Zombie did Halloween reboots and everything. And that's primarily where I know him for his directorial stuff. Like, but when I think of Rob Zombie, I think of his music, of course, whether solo or with White Zombie. Um, it's just kind of what I think of when I hear the name Rob Zombie. So I'm not like I wouldn't say I'm like super familiar with his directorial style and stuff. Um, Compared to other directors, like you think of certain directors, and yeah, they have a very specific style. You think of Tarantino. It's like you can tell when it's a Tarantino movie. He has a very specific style. Um, but yeah, I don't know exactly what to expect and how this is going to compare to Rob Zombie's Halloween and everything. Um, but I'm definitely interested in checking it out. And like I said, this is only the first of the trilogy too. Um, yeah, I don't know what to expect exactly with it. I've seen a lot of horror movies throughout the years, and they vary. All kinds of different styles, different themes, ideas, creative kills, and whatnot. I don't know if this is going to be more on the kind of level of Terrifier, where it's going to be just kind of senseless, ridiculous, over the top killing with a villain who's just ridiculously, surprisingly charismatic. Seriously, Art the Clown has a surprising amount of charisma for not saying a word during those movies. And that it comes up to the actor, of course, but still. Um, or if it's going to be something that's like there's more of a point to it, or maybe even something in between. There's a lot of different ways that this could go. Um, I I I think from what the little tiny bit I know is I think if I'm right about the clown guy, I think he is like he's maybe insane, but he can think. He's not like some kind of mindless killer. He actually has like purpose and thought process and everything. Um, because I've heard of these movies. It's like being a fan of horror. It's like of course I've heard of these movies. I just don't know much about them. I don't really know much of anything about the story and the plot and what actually happens in them. I've heard of them vaguely. Um, in fact, I think maybe one or two of the actors have been to this convention in my state near me called Astronomicon. Because they have a lot of horror guests at Astronomicon. They've had like I believe they've had Kane Hodder there, Jason. I don't think I've heard that they've had uh, mine is blanking. Robert Englund. I don't think Robert Englund's been there. But they've had a lot of different horror names, and they might have even had some from this trilogy. It's very possible. Um, but yeah, I don't know what to really expect from this, what kind of horror movie it's going to be. I just know that people love them, that they have a really strong audience. It's not quite again. It's more of a cult audience rather than the likes of like Halloween or Scream or Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, that kind of stuff, which is more a mainstream horror audience. This is more on the level, like in terms of audience, like Terrifier, something that's more of a cult audience that's like the big horror fanatics are a lot more into, rather than just a more mainstream thing. So I wonder if the movie's going to reflect that. But I'm interested. This is from 2003, so it's over. Well, actually, this year it's going to be 20 years old. um, so it's going to be interesting to see. Like, I've seen plenty of movies from that era and everything. It's going to be interesting to see if there's any like early 2000s kind of style to that. Like, are there going to be any characters like who are very clearly from the early 2000s, basically? Or is it going to just focus more on maybe nostalgia? Like, is there going to be like a nostalgic feeling to it with more of like maybe an 80s, 70s, 80s horror vibe, or even earlier with some of the like really classic stuff? I don't know. I don't know the kind of vibes it's going for, honestly. But again, I'm very interested to find out. Because again, I only know like basically one of the characters, and I don't even know like 100%. um, I don't know 100% like on the character. Like I've heard of this series, like very vaguely, very briefly. Uh, so yeah, we're just gonna get this started. Hope for the best. This is a donation reward, by the way, for Sweet Venom. So just wanted to mention that real quick. But let's get this going. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after fades to black and fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the movie. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So I was looking some stuff up in between, because I just wanted to get a feel for things, and apparently, unfortunately, a lot of the names in this movie have since passed away. It's not just Sid Haig. Quite a few of the names have passed away, such as Dennis Fimple, who was Grandpa Hugo. Matthew McGrory, who was Tiny. Tom Towles, Deputy George Wydell. Harrison Young, who was Don, the former officer and the father, you know. Erwin Keyes, who was Ravelli, and so on and so forth. Apparently, quite a few of them have unfortunately passed away. Even Karen Black, who was Mother Firefly. And that, I mean, they've passed away by this point. That doesn't mean they're not in, like, the second film or whatnot, but some of them might not be in the third because the third one came out so long after. The second film came out in 2005, and the third one came out in 2019, so... but I also found out that Baby Firefly, the young, cutesy one, I guess, she's played by Sherry Moon Zombie. Rob Zombie's wife. So that's fun. That's interesting. And I also found out that the sheriff, who I was wondering, like, by the voice of, like, I'm wondering, like, who is that voice? I know that voice. He's Hugh. in Avatar: The Last Airbender, the swamp bender who controls the vines, and he has the vine creature with the mask, who appears in the swamp, and then again at the Day of the Black Sun invasion. Yeah, that's Hugh. I recently watched the Day of Black Sun, so I remembered Hugh's voice. I couldn't place it while reacting. It's like it was at the tip of my brain. I could almost like get it, but I just wasn't there. It's like that is exactly where I recognized his voice from. um, I've seen Avatar: The Last Airbender so many times as well that it's just like, of course, I would recognize his voice even if I hadn't just watched episodes with him in it semi recently. Um, but yeah, so this film also apparently took place in the 70s. I think this said. Let me check just to be sure. Yeah, late 70s, 77. Um, and while watching, I was kind of thinking to myself, like, this doesn't seem like it's modern day. It didn't come across as modern day to me. Um, and so I was kind of right in that. um, but yeah, it's like this was good, honestly. I probably don't think it's as good as a lot of the cult following that it's gained. A lot of people probably think this is like really fantastic and whatnot, but I just think it's good. It's not even meh at all. It's genuinely good, but it's not like great or anything. It's not like amazing. It's nothing like altogether like fantastic. I think one of the biggest issues for me, in fact, probably the only real issue, is the constant cutaways. You know what I mean? Where it like cuts away to like some random shot of some like there was that one random guy who was like it looked like he was standing in the middle of nowhere by a shack with all the signs and everything, and he was like I don't even remember exactly what he said, but it seemed completely random. And there's a couple points where it did that. It cut to random people like talking about something, and it's like it kind of tied into what was going on, but at the same time, it seemed like it was a cutaway. It was a random cutaway. And there were also points that were like, okay, you're clearly trying this visual thing where it's like either it goes like really blurry, or there was the points where it showed Otis and everything, and it was like, oh, we're gonna show it in regular color, and then all of a sudden it's red. It's just blatant red, but then it goes back to regular color. Then it goes to red again, and it's like it just switched back and forth a couple of times in there, and it's like, why? Is there a reason for this? It's like some of that kind of stuff just it felt a little needless. It didn't hurt anything necessarily, but it just felt needless, and it felt like it was trying to put in a little too much style over substance just in those moments. Um, but when it actually like really focused on like the family and the torture and killing and stuff and all of that, it was good. It was really good. Um, and obviously, Captain Spaulding was a standout. I kind of expected that going in just because of how much attention he has gotten, Sig Haid has gotten. Um, he's a really huge name. Like, when he passed away, like, I saw that everywhere. It was a huge deal. And it's really cool to know that he made that much of an impact on people during his life. It sucks that he passed away as he did, but to know that he made an impact and his legacy is still around, and even to the point where someone like me, I can discover his work now for the first time. It's really cool to see that with not just him but any actor who passes away unfortunately before their time and everything. It's great to see that their legacies can remain alive and that they can be remembered, not just as great actors, but especially the ones who can be remembered for the great people they might have been. A lot of cases like that has been the case. There's a lot of them who have just been genuinely good people despite playing some kind of fucked up characters sometimes. It happens. It's acting. um, and so throughout this movie, it's like I'm seeing the Sig Haig parts, seeing seeing his parts as Captain Spaulding and everything, and I'm like, my thought going into this was that he was the bad guy. That was where I thought this was going. Um, that he was going to be the main villain. Instead, no, we get this Firefly family. Um, instead, and so we have we have all of this going down, and Captain Spaulding's gone from a lot of it. When he's on screen, he owns every scene he's in. Like, he did an amazing job. And I almost kind of wish he was in more of it. Maybe he'll be more in the sequels and whatnot. I don't know. But it kind of sets up that he probably could be, considering we see at the end there, and I did find this out, that did happen. It wasn't a dream or anything. We find out at the end there that that Captain Spaulding and Otis, I guess the Firefly family as a whole, are working together. They are allied. So he sent the kids and even the cops there, knowing that they would die. In fact, probably betting on it. And we saw earlier in the movie, he seemed reluctant to do so. Like, they kind of had to convince him to do it, and he eventually drew the map and everything. I think that was all in his plan, too. I don't know for sure. Maybe it'll say in the next movie one way or another, but it seems to me like maybe, like, that was his plan all along. Because during the ride at his attraction, he made a notable effort in pointing out the Dr. Satan stuff and pointing out that the tree and everything was right near here and everything. It's like he made that very clear, and he made it a very, like, he punctuated it. Let's put it that way. He punctuated that was all near here, after having already seen how interested in this kind of stuff at least the guys were. And so I think he made it so that they were going to ask. He kind of led them into asking about that. And then the way he, like, argued with them about it was, I think, just trying to get them more interested so that he could eventually pretend to reluctantly give them the information, when in reality that was the plan all along. I don't know if that's true, but that's the vibe I'm getting. Considering we do find out at the end that he and Otis are working together, it's like that's the vibe I'm getting. And we did see early on, like pretty much right at the beginning, I think, he killed those guys who were trying to rob him and everything. So it's like we knew he was willing to kill. And yeah, it's just I guess interesting to see all of that come kind of back in at the end. The murders themselves, like, weren't super creative, like, compared to other stuff I've seen. It's like, it's no Terrifier. um, but it's more the surrounding, everything around it that makes it more interesting. I think the most interesting of the actual murders that we see is probably the one guy who ends up getting, after they get buried and everything, he gets dragged away and brought to Dr. Satan's table, his operating table and all, and like Dr. Satan's experimenting on him and shit. It's like that's probably the most interesting one that we see, but probably the most interesting aftermath is Bill, Rainn Wilson's character, because of being turned into the fish man or whatever it was called. That's a pretty interesting bit of aftermath for his death. um, and I was kind of back and forth on if anyone was going to end up escaping on this. Like we saw the cheerleaders throughout, and it's like yeah, they were very clearly like all gonna die. Like none of that was ever going to change. But it was like kind of I was kind of back and forth on how many of these the four kids our main characters, how many of them would escape or not. And in the end, none of them actually did. It almost seemed like the last girl was going to at first, but in the end she wasn't able to. There was even a moment where it's like I was kind of thinking the one who ran away while they were in the sheep costumes and everything, who was chased and killed by Baby. I was thinking for a moment that she was actually going to manage to overpower Baby and escape, or at least have to almost escape and get killed maybe by Otis or something. But in the end, no, Baby ended up overpowering and killing her too. Um, so that's yeah, interesting in and of itself. Um, there's a lot of interesting stuff in here, and I'm very interested to see where the rest of this goes because we're obviously going to follow different main characters next time. Um, I assume the Firefly family and Captain Spaulding will be in all of them. Considering the trilogy is called the Firefly trilogy, and Captain Spaulding's kind of the most iconic face from these movies, I do know. So I assume all three of them, or all of them, are going to be in all three movies. I'm just wondering about the title of the last one now, Three from Hell. Because I assume maybe that's referring to three specific characters, which one would have to be Captain Spaulding. Maybe Otis would be another one, but then who would the third be? Maybe they bring in another character in the second or third movie. Um, or maybe it's another one of the Firefly family. Maybe it's Baby. That's possible. It could be Baby. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. And I don't want to know ahead of time, so don't tell me. um, because I will be reacting to the other movies in this trilogy. Just letting you know ahead of time. They will be reacted to as well. So I don't want to know any spoilers. But this was, it was good. It wasn't the best horror movies I've seen, and it definitely, like, it felt almost kind of like an independent kind of production. It didn't feel like a big name horror movie, and in a way, I kind of like that. Again, my only real issue was with the cutaways and everything, just felt a little too much, you know? But that's altogether a minor issue. It doesn't hurt the movie overall, and it doesn't stop the good parts, and especially Sid Haig's parts from being really good. So yeah, and yeah, um, apparently also, um, I believe. Let me see here. There's one other thing I wanted to mention real quick before we end this. Yeah. Bill Moseley, who was once again uh, Otis. My mind blanked. I have seen him in at least one other thing I know. I found out he was Luigi Largo in Repo, the Genetic Opera. So I've seen him in that because I've seen Repo probably two or three times. Um, so I know him from that. I looked up pictures and it's like, oh yeah, I know who that is. So that's a little fun thing too. If you haven't seen Repo the Genetic Opera, I would suggest it. I don't remember too much because it's been quite a while since I've seen it. But I believe Alexa Vega's in it. From Spy Kids fame. And also, if I remember right, Joan Jett has a cameo in it. Um, Yes, Alexa Pena Vega is in it. Paris Hilton's in it too. So that's fun. But yeah, Reba the Genetic Opera. I would suggest it for sure. It's obviously got some really good music. It's pretty wild, pretty fun. Um, but yeah, and Bill Moseley is in it as Luigi. So there you go. But either way, this was a good movie, and I'm definitely interested in continuing these in the future. So we will see the others down the line. But for now, tell me in the comments below, what did you think of House of 1,000 Corpses? I mean, I personally don't think there were 1,000 corpses in this movie. I think that was a little exaggerated, but it was still good. It was still good. Let me know your thoughts down below, and for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.